believe you're free because you make your own decisions. But what if some of those choices weren't truly yours? Not the career you pursue, not the relationships you cling to, not even the fears you dodge. What if your life has been quietly steered by a version of yourself you never consciously chose? One shaped by survival rather than truth. That's not philosophy or mysticism, it's psychology. It's real. Most people don't need more freedom, they need more self-awareness. Because the only true prison is the one you inhabit unconsciously. The beliefs you never questioned, the patterns you never noticed, the wounds you never healed. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel. Both understood the same truth. If you don't know what moves you from within, you're not living. You're just reacting. But here's the good news. The moment you recognize the mask is the moment you reclaim choice. This isn't about fixing or pretending. It's about noticing, honestly, compassionately, and perhaps for the first time, remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. If that resonates, if you feel something stir within you, then you're already on the path. Because true freedom isn't about breaking rules, it's about breaking illusions. From birth, we're taught how to behave, how to be good, not in the sense of virtue, but of acceptability. We learn what earns smiles, what makes people withdraw, what brings praise or punishment, and so we adapt. We hide emotions, silence questions, and become experts at sensing what others want from us. You stifled the parts deemed too intense, too emotional, too different. You laughed when you didn't find things funny. You said yes when every fiber of your being screamed no. You diluted yourself to fit in. Over time, that compromise felt safe. The world pushed back less. People liked you. You gained approval. But that peace comes at a cost. Comfort isn't true peace. Real peace doesn't demand that you shrink. What you've mistaken for peace is relief, a temporary silence bought by betraying yourself. And the deeper tragedy? After wearing the mask long enough, you forgot it was there. You didn't just act like the version others approved of. You believed you were that version. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because when you realize how much of yourself you silenced, buried, or distorted, it shakes you. But there's liberation in it too. That quiet ache in your chest when you're alone, that discomfort when everything seems fine, that's your true self whispering. It never died, it just grew quiet. The soul doesn't vanish, it waits. Sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. Then, one day, something cracks and you can't unsee the truth. Socrates claimed the unexamined life is not worth living. But what if the life you're living isn't yours? What if it's a performance built on fear, shaped by expectation, and sustained by silence? Who are you performing for? Trace it back, and you'll often find it's not even your voice you're obeying. It's the echoes of a parent you wanted to please, a teacher you feared disappointing, a culture that dictated what strength should look like. Those voices, though long gone, still pull the strings, unless you become aware of them. Awareness isn't always pleasant. It disrupts routines and confronts you with truths you'd rather ignore. But as Plato wrote, the price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. The same applies to your inner world. The price of ignoring your truth is being ruled by your wounds. At first, it feels like breaking apart, like everything you knew about yourself is up for question. But that's not destruction. It's liberation. Because once you see the mask, you get to choose. Do I still want to wear this? There's no quick fix, no shortcut. But there is something far more valuable, an invitation to meet yourself honestly, to listen to the parts you've silenced, to hold your contradictions without judgment. As Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Self-acknowledge isn't clean or easy. It's messy, raw, and deeply human. But once you begin, something shifts. You stop chasing approval. You stop begging the world to validate a version of you that isn't real. And you start settling into something quieter, yet infinitely stronger, a freedom that can't be taken away because it doesn't depend on anyone else's permission. That's where peace begins. Not in perfection, but in truth, in wholeness, in no longer needing to perform. Jung didn't call it self-sabotage. He called it the shadow. The part of you that holds everything you've pushed away, not because it was evil, but because someone convinced you it was unacceptable. The jealousy when others shine, the anger when you're overlooked, the craving for recognition you're too ashamed to admit, it all lives there, waiting. And as long as you deny those feelings, they grow stronger. You might think you're making rational choices, that you're just unlucky in love or prone to snapping under stress. But what if those blow-ups, that stuckness, those regrets, aren't random? What if they're the same old story playing out because you've never stopped to listen? That's your shadow. It's not abstract. It's the buried part of you still seeking expression. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That one sentence explains more pain than most realize. We walk through life thinking we're in control, but most of us are acting out emotional blueprints we never consciously agreed to. You're drawn to the same kind of people, the ones who don't see you, the ones who take more than they give, or maybe you playing the savior, fixing everyone, hoping they'll stay. These aren't just bad choices, they're shadows in motion, patterns that emerge when unhealed wounds still seek resolution. When you ask, why do I always do this, or what's wrong with me, you're asking the wrong questions. The better question is, what am I not willing to feel? Because whatever you refuse to feel will control you. The shadow isn't just rage, grief, or shame. It's also your hunger for love, your buried creativity, your silenced voice, your unapologetic truth. You locked it away to survive, but now you're still living as if the war continues. That's the real tragedy. The danger is gone, but the armor remains. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But knowing yourself isn't about the polished parts. It's about turning toward what you've rejected and saying, I see you. You belong here too. That's not weakness, it's wholeness. The longer you avoid your shadow, the more it distorts your relationships, goals, and sense of self. You'll blame others, call it bad timing, or resign yourself to how life is. But beneath it all, the truth keeps whispering. Here's the shift. The shadow doesn't want to ruin you, it wants to be integrated. Acknowledged, not denied. Because within those uncomfortable emotions lies raw energy that, when claimed, becomes confidence, clarity, and power. You don't fight the shadow. You meet it. You sit with discomfort instead of numbing it. You track patterns instead of reacting. You get curious instead of judgmental. Plato wrote, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. He wasn't talking about dominating your feelings, but understanding them. That's how you reclaim your choices. Not by becoming perfect or emotionless, but by waking up. You recognize when your shadow is triggered, you catch it before it takes over, and slowly you begin steering your life, not by force, but by awareness. True freedom isn't about avoiding what's hidden, it's about turning toward it and saying, I'm ready now. When you bring light to the parts you once feared, they stop driving you. That's when you take the wheel back. You say you want peace, but peace doesn't grow where truth is buried. You can repeat affirmations, meditate, or surround yourself with calm, but none of it lasts if you're still hiding from yourself. Denial isn't healing, it's delay. And the longer you delay, the more pressure builds behind the mask. You say you want love, but how can anyone truly love you when you don't show them who you are? You offer a curated version, agreeable, uncomplicated, never messy. That may earn acceptance, but it's hollow because deep down you know they're not choosing you, they're choosing your performance. You want clarity, alignment, but every time discomfort arises, you look away. You distract, scroll, overthink, escape into plans, telling yourself productivity will fix the ache. But clarity only comes when you sit with the mess, when you feel what you've been running from. You say, yo, you want growth, but growth is born from tension, from breakdowns, from staring your patterns in the face and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. Most people avoid that moment, not because they're weak, but because it's hard. Jung observed people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. You feel that truth in how quickly we reach for distraction when alone. This is the quiet war inside, who you are versus who you became to be accepted. That version of you, the one who smooths edges, suppresses inconvenient emotions, acts strong while falling apart, didn't emerge from nowhere. It came from survival. But survival mode isn't meant to be permanent. The longer you live in it, the more disconnected you become. That disconnection doesn't always look dramatic. It's the anxiety that won't fade, the burnout despite doing everything right, the numbness creeping in even when your life looks good on paper. These aren't flaws, they're signals. Your body, mind, and spirit waving a flag. You've drifted too far from yourself. Plato said the worst form of injustice is pretended justice. The same happens internally. When you pretend you're okay, aligned, whole, your inner world suffers. It knows what's been avoided. It knows what still needs to be heard. The ego isn't the villain. It's just afraid that if you show too much, you'll be rejected. that if you let go of control, you'll fall apart. So it clings, edits, polishes, presents a manageable version of life. But that version traps you because it's built on fear, not truth. The price of that illusion is high. You trade depth for approval, authenticity for certainty, freedom for safety. But what if you didn't have to? What if peace wasn't about control, but about allowing everything to be seen? Socrates said to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. Maybe that's where it starts, not with fixing or performing, but with noticing, with honesty, with admitting what hurts, what scares you, what still needs healing, because once you tell yourself the truth, the war begins to end. And in that ending, something softer emerges, not the silence of suppression, but the quiet of reality. Because finally, there's no one left to pretend to be. The world taught you how to behave, blend in, smile when you're hurting, and never ask for too much. It taught you that being good meant being easy to manage, that love is earned by staying agreeable. But Jung didn't tell you to be good. He told you to be whole. There's a difference. To be whole is to welcome all of who you are, not just the polished parts that earn praise, but the rough edges too. The pride when you succeed, the pain when you're alone, the strength you ignore, the shame you bury, all of it is you. And when you cut pieces of yourself away to be accepted, you don't become more lovable, you become less you. Fragmentation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's a low hum of emptiness, like you're living slightly outside your life, going through motions, say, what's expected, yet feeling like a stranger behind your own eyes. That's not peace, it's imprisonment. Plato said, the worst of all deceptions is self-deception. He was right. The moment you lie to yourself about what you want, need, or who you are, you break that inner connection. Over time, that disconnection hurts as unexplained exhaustion, building resentment, joy just out of reach. No matter how much you accomplish, the first step toward freedom isn't a leap. It's a decision, a quiet moment where you say, I'm done pretending. You stop performing for applause that doesn't satisfy. You stop contorting yourself to meet draining expectation. You stop chasing the comfort of being liked and start reaching for the deeper satisfaction of being real. Yes, it will cost you. Some people won't handle your truth. Some will withdraw when you stop filtering your feelings. But those people were never truly seeing you. The ones who stay, they'll be choosing you, not the mask. There's something sacred about being seen in your fullness. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, but knowing yourself isn't a thought experiment, it's lived experience. Facing the uncomfortable parts you were told to hide, the emotions suppressed for years. It means holding all of that and saying, this is part of me, and I'm not ashamed. You don't become whole by denying your darkness. You become whole by integrating it, making space for it, learning from it, because within that darkness often lies what you've been searching for, your voice, your power, your depth. Jung called this the path of individuation, becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. It's not easy, but it's real. And once you begin, the need to pretend fades, the need to control perceptions loosens. You stop living from fear and start moving from truth. That becomes the foundation for a life that's not just successful, but authentic. In the end, you realize you were never too much, you were just never fully seen. Now you have the courage to be seen as you are, whole. The shadow isn't there to destroy you, it's there to complete you. Most hear shadow and think of danger, something to avoid. We associate it with weakness, shame, guilt, behaviors we're not proud of. But Jung's shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you cast aside when you learn to survive. It's your rejected thoughts, hidden impulses, unspoken emotions. It's everything you were taught not to be, but still are. It holds your jealousy, yes, but also your anger, but also your sense of justice, your fear, but also your intuition, your sensitivity, but also your creativity. What we bury doesn't disappear, it waits. And while it waits, it grows stronger in the dark. Ignoring your shadow doesn't make it dormant, it acts out, unconsciously, becoming the voice of self-doubt, the pattern keeping you stuck in the same arguments, heartbreaks, fears. It shapes your choices while convincing you they're rational. It makes you mistake coping mechanisms for personality traits. The more you ignore it, the more chaos it creates. But when you stop running, when you turn toward it honestly, everything changes. What once erupted as anger becomes clarity and boundaries. What felt like envy transforms into drive. What was fear sharpens into instinct. That's the power of bringing the unconscious into light. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And fate, when unaware of your inner world, becomes a loop. You wonder, why does this keep happening to me? But what's really happening is your shadow living through you, repeating what was never healed. That's where individuation begins. Jung didn't see healing as becoming perfect. He saw it as becoming real. He said, I'd rather be whole than good. That's the essence of this journey. Not to be flawless, but to be fully, fearlessly you. Most spend their lives chasing freedom, peace, love, happiness, fulfillment through denial, performance, editing themselves to stay liked, safe, within society's lines of acceptability. But that safety's a cage. You master the performance, but behind closed doors, you feel numb, disconnected. You wonder why nothing feels real. The truth? Freedom isn't something you find, it's something you remember. You were born whole before anyone told you who to be, what to hide, what to be ashamed of. You were free, expressive, curious, bold, sensitive, intuitive. Then, little by little, you were told, this part is too much, this part not enough, that emotion is unattractive, that truth is inconvenient. So you split, you buried parts to belong. At the time, it was survival, but now you carry a fragmented self, wondering why something always feels missing. Plato said, the soul takes nothing with her to the next world but her education and her upbringing. What you absorb, especially young, becomes your internal blueprint, the foundation of your shadow. Until you confront it, it remains the silent architect of your life. This is why emotional patterns repeat, even when circumstances change. You can leave toxic relationships, find better jobs, move cities, but if your shadow isn't integrated, the same wounds find new ways to surface. They dress differently, speak differently, but the story stays the same. So what does integration look like? It's subtle. It's catching yourself spiraling in self-doubt and asking, whose voice is that? It's feeling triggered and pausing to ask, what is this anger protecting? It's finally stopping apologies for having needs, for feeling deeply, for being human. Integration is becoming the observer of your shadow, not its puppet. It doesn't erase fear, envy, or insecurity. It means they no longer control your decisions, hijack relationships, or keep you stuck. You recognize them as echoes from an old story, and with that awareness, you reclaim your power. Socrates said, the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, on building the new. But building the new starts with understanding the old, not avoiding it with goals or affirmations. You can't heal what you're afraid to look at. You can't grow into your future if your past still runs you. Integration doesn't make you perfect. It makes you honest. And honesty for yourself is the foundation of real peace. When you stop lying about who you are, stop hiding to be accepted, you finally exhale. You move through the world with less tension, speak with less hesitation, love with less fear, because you're no longer terrified of being seen. That's real freedom, the kind that can't be taken because it was never dependent on anyone else. It wasn't something to chase, it was always inside you, buried beneath roles, expectations, fear, waiting to be remembered. Aristotle said, happiness depends upon ourselves, but not the version we pretend to be, the real one, the one we've been running from, the one that holds both light and dark, strength and softness, logic and longing. Once you meet that version, the search ends. Not because life becomes easy, but because you're no longer lost in it. You know who you are, and even when you forget, you now have a map back. That map is the shadow, not a curse, not a flaw, but a compass, a reminder, a necessary mirror. Freedom isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of wholeness. And now that you've seen the truth, you can't unknow it. You're not broken, you're just divided. And now, you're coming home. You were never missing pieces, you were just waiting to remember all of who you are. Here's the continuation. When you finally stop running, something unexpected happens. The parts of yourself you feared, the anger, the neediness, the imperfections, begin to soften. They no longer control you because you've stopped resisting them. Instead of being enemies, they become allies. Your anger teaches you boundaries. Your fear sharpens your intuition. Your sensitivity deepens your empathy. This is the paradox of wholeness. What you once disowned becomes your greatest strength. But the journey isn't linear. There will be days when the old masks feel safer, when the weight of authenticity feels too heavy. That's okay. Healing isn't about never faltering. It's about recognizing when you do and gently guiding yourself back. You'll start to notice the moments when you shrink, when you people please, when you silence yourself to keep the peace. And instead of judging, you'll learn to pause, to ask, what am I afraid will happen if I show up fully? The answers might surprise you. Maybe you're afraid of being too much, too intense, too emotional, too demanding, or maybe you fear being not enough, not smart enough, not lovable enough, not worthy. These fears aren't flaws, they're clues. They point to where you've been wounded, where you've internalized someone else's limitations as truth. And here's the turning point. You don't have to believe those stories anymore. Every time you choose honesty over performance, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every time you honor your needs instead of betraying them, you rebuild trust with yourself. This is how the fragments come back together, not through force, but through small daily acts of courage. You'll also begin to see others differently. When you stop projecting your unhealed parts onto them, relationships transform. You no longer expect people to fill your voids or validate your worth. You stop demanding perfection from them or yourself. And in that space, real connection becomes possible. This is the gift of shadow work. It doesn't just free you, it changes how you move through the world. You become more patient, less reactive, more compassionate, less judgmental. Because you understand now, everyone is fighting their own unseen battles, wearing their own masks. So where do you go from here? Start small. Pay attention. Notice when you're performing versus when you're being. Catch the automatic thoughts that say you shouldn't feel this way or don't make waves. Question them. Get curious about your triggers. When someone's criticism stings or a situation leaves you seething, ask, what old wound does this touch? Practice saying no when you mean no. Speak up when something matters to you. Let yourself take up space, and most importantly, be kind to yourself. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been. The poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. Your shadows aren't mistakes to erase, they're doorways. The very parts you've been ashamed of hold the keys to your best wisdom, your creativity, your capacity to love and be loved. So don't turn away, lean in, listen. The life you've been waiting for isn't on the other side of perfection. It's here, now, in the messy, glorious process of becoming whole. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. This work is ancient. It's human. Across time, across cultures, the seekers, the healers, the poets, and philosophers have all pointed to the same truth. Freedom begins when you stop hiding from yourself. So take a breath. You're exactly where you need to be. The journey home isn't a race, it's a remembering. And every step, no matter how small, counts. Welcome back to yourself. The path to wholeness isn't about reaching some distant finish line. It's about the quiet moments of recognition when you catch yourself choosing truth over fear. It's in the gentle way you begin to hold all parts of yourself, not just the presentable ones. This isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. As you continue forward, remember, every time you honor your authentic feelings instead of suppressing them, every time you set boundaries with love instead of resentment, every time you choose self-respect over approval, you're coming home to yourself. These aren't just actions. The revolutions. The world may have taught you to hide, but your soul never forgot how to be free. Now you're remembering, and that changes everything. So keep going, not towards some idealized version of yourself, but deeper into the truth of who you already are. The light and the shadow, the strength and the softness, the contradictions that make you human. This is where real peace lives, not in perfection, but in the courageous, imperfect, beautiful act of being exactly who you are. Welcome home.